Did you know there are actual gangs within police departments? Well, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department has been found to have at least 18 deputy gangs operating within its ranks, and they've been involved in violence against communities for many decades. In this video, we're going to expose the most notorious and still active LA deputy gangs, and we're going to show you their most heinous acts against innocent people. We're going to explain to you how they operate and how they get away with their crimes. So handcuff the like button, arrest the subscribe button, and let's dive right in. Despite testimonies and awareness of the issue by various government agencies and bodies, there have been a lack of internal investigations or significant policy changes to address the problem. These deputy gangs have been responsible for the deaths of at least 19 individuals, all of whom were men of color, with 4 of them having mental illnesses. The lawsuits relating to these incidents have cost the county over $100 million in the past 3 decades. Under California Penal Code Section 186.22, a criminal gang is defined as a group of 3 or more individuals with a common name, sign, or symbol engaging in criminal activities as a primary focus and displaying a pattern of criminal gang activity. The deputy gangs within the Sheriff's Department very much meet this definition. The origins of these gangs can be traced back to the mid-1800s when the Sheriff's Department operated in a lawless environment. Sheriff Peter Pitchess, who served in the late 1950s, introduced aggressive expansion and modernization policies that disproportionately affected Black and Hispanic communities. One infamous incident during Pitch's term was the Chicano moratorium in 1970, where sheriff's deputies engaged in violence against demonstrators, resulting in multiple deaths, including that of journalist Ruben Salazar. The incident led to public criticism of the department and the rise of the first known deputy gang, the Little Devils, although it's unclear if any disciplinary action was taken against its members. Another gang, the Cavemen, formed at the East Los Angeles station in the late 1980s and continued to develop even after the exposure of the Little Devils. The Cavemen allegedly targeted members of various races and engaged in violence against civilians. The culture of deputy gangs spread to other parts of the country as well. The Posse, a gang operating within the Twin Towers Correctional Facility, used coded messages to communicate and target incarcerated individuals, particularly those with mental health issues. Incidents of excessive force and violence were reported, such as the beating to death of Danny Smith, a Black man with a mental illness, in 1998. Another gang that emerged within the Peter J. Pitchess Detention Center, known as the Wayside Honor Rancho, was the Wayside Whiteys. This gang specifically targeted incarcerated Black men, and its members used hand signs and exchanged signs with incarcerated gang members. This group existed for a considerable time before gaining public attention. Victims of deputy gang violence have faced abuse and brutality at the hands of law enforcement. The sad truth is, cases involving deputy gangs often don't go to trial, as the county prefers to settle to avoid the potential exposure of deputies and victims under oath. One notable case is the murder of Hong Pio Lee, who was pursued and killed by LASD deputies in 1988. The deputies claimed Lee ran a stop sign and led them on a chase, but the circumstances surrounding his death raise many questions. Despite the documented evidence and testimonies regarding deputy gangs, the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department has not provided any comment on the matter. Now, let's take a look at the rise of the Vikings, the most vicious of the LASD deputy gangs. The Linwood Vikings, also known as LVS25, which is short for Linwood Vario Sheriffs 25, was a gang within the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department in the 1980s and 1990s. They used the Viking hand sign and considered themselves a tight-knit group proud of their station, the Linwood Station. The gang engaged in criminal activities such as murder, assault, trespassing, and torture, primarily targeting minority individuals in the Linwood neighborhood. The Vikings marked their territory by spray painting walls and power poles, and even targeting prominent figures like Judge Lance Ito during the O.J. Simpson case. They developed their own street language and used terms like homeboys for members and OG for veteran officers. The gang's behavior included racist elements, such as a map of Linwood shaped like Africa and racist cartoons displayed at the station. But hold on a second. After what I just described, Do you realize these are police officers doing straight-up gangster shit? That's what we're talking about here. Anyways, conflicts rose up within the LASD when the Vikings started to feel invincible and began harassing other deputies, including high-ranking officials. Cases of harassment included vandalism, prank calls, threats, and even attempts to harm them physically. Captain Bert Swaver attempted to phase out the Viking symbol due to concerns about its perception in the community, but the gang members became more aggressive and continued targeting their superiors. Some deputies who opposed the Vikings were transferred out of the station, leading to a lawsuit that was eventually dismissed. The gang maintained a culture of loyalty and secrecy, rewarding members with tattoos to signify their membership and dedication. While predominantly composed of white deputies, they occasionally recruited deputies of color, modifying their tattoos to reflect their heritage. Hong Pyo Lee's case, who was killed by a Viking member, Paul Tanaka, was initially deemed a self-defense case that later led to a settlement paid by taxpayers. This settlement, in addition to the lack of financial and disciplinary consequences, made the Vikings feel even more untouchable. Investigations into the Linwood Vikings revealed numerous incidents of brutality and racial slurs used against victims, often resulting in false charges. Victims filed a federal lawsuit against the gang, including cases of excessive force and racial discrimination, but the gang members operated with impunity, acting like a legit street gang in their actions, except with no appropriate consequences. Here are some of the most gruesome criminal acts the Vikings committed through their peak. Lloyd Polk, a half-black, half-Latino individual, was savagely beaten by several deputies, leading to his arrest and false charges. However, an independent witness saw the deputies assaulting Polk and reported it to the authorities. Eventually, the charges against Polk were dismissed, prompting him to take a stand against the deputy gangs. In March 1990, there were 6 failed raids that took place. At the Mayer family home, a group of deputies, including James Whitten, Richard Calzada, and others, conducted a search warrant. They held the family at gunpoint while their house was torn apart. Carlos Mayer was also beaten by 5 of the deputies at the Linwood station. Another home was forcefully entered by deputies Craig Ditch, Frank Gonzalez, and others. They also held the family inside at gunpoint and even attacked a bedridden woman who had just had surgery. Deputies lifted her out of bed and forcibly moved her around the inside of the house. In another home, the Calderon family were held at gunpoint while their belongings were ransacked. A lawfully owned rifle that belonged to the homeowner was taken and later returned damaged. Ruben Calderon was attacked by several deputies, including those involved in the previous incidents. He was choked, had a car door slammed on his legs, and then was beaten again at the Linwood station. On March the 24th, 1990, 2 groups of deputies unlawfully detained a Latino family of 7. They attacked all the Hispanic men and assaulted Estela and Marta Velez, who was 8 months pregnant. An 82-year-old woman was held at gunpoint in her bed. And the list goes on and on. Overall, the Linwood Vikings represented a disturbing aspect of the LASD's history, operating as an internal gang responsible for crimes and racial discrimination. The unfortunate lack of accountability within the department allowed their actions to persist for a long period before they were finally exposed. The Linwood station closed in 1994 and was replaced by the newly built Century station. The court order by Judge Hatter to stop the Vikings was blocked and later changed by the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. According to John Burton, president of the board of directors of the National Police Accountability Project, the court order wasn't well made, which made it harder to defend on appeal. They believe there are still too many shootings happening, and they are covered up from the moment investigators get involved. Burton's colleague, James Mueller, agrees and thinks that even though there were gangs 30 years ago, there are still deputy gangs today. They see it as an ongoing problem. And guess what? Instead of stopping them, the legal action actually made the Vikings even more confident. The police department didn't make any significant changes, and as the cherry on the top, many of the Vikings were promoted and moved to different areas. As a consequence, this allowed them to teach their tactics to more deputies and recruit new members, and so spread the deputy gang cancer further into the law enforcement system.